Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a woman and the reservations clerk at a conference centre. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Conference Centre reservations. Good morning.
Hi, I'm interested in the computing conference next month.
Future directions in computing?
Yes, that's right. Could I ask you a few questions about it?
Of course.
Okay. I know the conference is for 3 days, but actually I want to attend on the Friday and Saturday only. Will that work out to be any cheaper?
Let me have a look. Well, you could register for the 2 days separately, but that wouldn't actually save you very much, as it still costs £35 for each day. In fact, if you could register for the 3 days, you also get an invitation to a free dinner on the Saturday night, so that's probably the better option.
Right, I'll do that. How much will the fees be in that case?
It's £75.
All right. I'd like to register for the full 3 days. Now, can I pay that by credit card?
I'm afraid not. You'll have to send a cheque to us. Or you can pay at the conference office.
Fine. So it's probably easiest if I pay by check. Now then, what else do I need to arrange? Right. How about accommodation? I guess that's not included in the price.
No, I'm sorry, it's not. But we do have a few rooms available for delegates at the conference centre if you'd like. Those are very cheap, but if you're interested, you'll need to book soon because there's always a heavy demand for them. They are only £15 per night, but they are very basic, and you'd have to get your own breakfast, because they don't provide you with that. But it's very convenient, because it's in the same building as the conference rooms.
Uh-huh.
Or there's a very reasonable guest house, which is £25 per night, and I think that includes your breakfast.
Is it close to the conference center?
It would be about a 10-minute walk away from here.
I see. That sounds quite reasonable.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
The details are all in our conference pack, which I'll send you.
Great, thanks. That'll be very useful. Oh, and can you also send me an application form?
Of course. I'll get that in the post to you straight away. Is there anything else?
Yes, actually. Can you tell me where exactly the conference center is?
Well, it's on South Park Road, and it's right at the end of the road next to the library. It's a 10-minute taxi ride from the station and will cost you £5. Otherwise, you can take the bus, which runs every half an hour from the station. That's the 21A, and it brings you straight to the conference centre.
Right, got that.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a recreation officer at a holiday resort telling the guests about their accommodation and the activities available. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 15.
Great. Well, hi everyone. My name's Jody, and I'm one of the 4 recreation officers here at Rainforest Lodge. My job is to make sure that you all have a great stay here with us and go away feeling relaxed and refreshed. As you can see, we're literally in the middle of nowhere at the lodge. There are no newspapers or TVs, and there's only one phone, and that's in the office. The lodge is a complete get-away-from-it-all experience, a place to unwind and appreciate the world without a lot of interruptions and distractions. From your cabin balcony, you'll find that you can't see anyone else, and the only noise you should hear is the birds. When the luggage comes, one of the guys will take it across to your cabin for you and make sure you know the way back here to the main center for dinner in the restaurant. Dinner will be served in about an hour or so. All the times of each day's activities are printed on the blue sheet you should have got in the information guides that were handed out on the coach. Each explorer trip has a different focus, so it doesn't matter how many you do or on what day, because there's always something new to discover in the rainforest. Tomorrow, I think we've still got places on the Orchid and Fungi tour. This is on foot and takes you to different parts of the rainforest. Or, if you'd prefer, there's the 4-wheel drive tour to the waterfalls. Or the fishing trip, where I promise you we'll catch some lunch. And last but not least, the famous crocodile cruise that leaves at 11 a.m. each day. Just in time for the crocodile's lunch. Oh, plenty to choose from here at Rainforest Lodge. Or just sit on your balcony, relax and unwind and enjoy the views. In the evenings, there is the Spotlight Tour, one of my favorites. The Spotlight Tour leaves at sundown and lets you catch a glimpse of some more of the rainforest wildlife as it comes out at dusk to feed. That's a great trip, and if you can, I'd really try to make sure you do it during your stay.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 16 to 20.
You've chosen to visit the rainforest in March, which is just at the end of the wet season, so you'll soon notice how well the waterfalls are running and also how damp the ground is. Things can tend to get a bit slippery, too, so if you didn't bring any walking boots, I'd advise you to hire some from the office. You'll also be much better off in long trousers rather than shorts, because they will give your legs more protection. And socks are a good idea, too. There's no need to be nervous of the rainforest, provided that you treat it with respect and common sense. Most of the animals and wildlife are gentle and harmless. There are some venomous snakes to beware of, but really, they're much more frightened of you than you are of them. The other thing is that certain plants can cause irritation if you touch them with bare skin. Well, that's about all for the time being. The guys are here to take you and your luggage to the cabin.
That is the end of section 2. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between a librarian and an education student. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 27. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 27.
Good afternoon. Can I help you?
Good afternoon. Yes, I've just transferred to the School of Education, and I'd like information about joining the library.
Well, the School of Education has libraries on 2 sites, as I'm sure you know. This one here is the Fordham site, and the other is on Castle Road.
And is there any difference between the 2 libraries?
Not in terms of their facilities. Access to online databases and the internet is available at both sites, and each site has a range of reference materials on education.
Oh, yes, I see.
But the Castle Road site has books on the sociology of education and a collection of textbooks and teaching resources covering most of the subjects taught in secondary schools.
Ah, right. But I'm training to be a primary teacher, so I need to look at materials for the 5 to 11 age group.
Then you've come to the right place. At Fordham, we hold material relating to primary education, as well as special needs. But, of course, you'll need to familiarise yourself with both sites to make the most of our resources.
You haven't mentioned periodicals. Are they held at both sites?
Current issues, yes, but if you want to look at back issues, you'll need to use the CD-ROM databases, which are held here at Fordham.
I see. Now, about borrowing books, I'm living out of town, so I'm hoping I can borrow quite a few items and cut down on the number of trips I have to make.
Right, well, members can borrow 2 books at a time from each site.
Only 2 books?
Only 2 from each site, but that's 4 altogether.
Oh, I see. And how long can I hang on to them for?
The borrowing period is 1 month, but of course books can be renewed. You can renew any item a maximum of 3 times.
Do I have to come to the library to do that?
No, you can do it by telephone or email, but you can't renew overdue books this way, only before or on the due date stamped in the book. We'll need your full name, your borrower number, and the name of the site library you borrowed the items from.
So, theoretically, I can borrow books for up to 3 months. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, provided they're not recalled.
So, what happens then?
Well, sometimes an item is requested by another borrower, in which case we'd send you a letter, and you'd have to return the book within 7 working days. Don't forget, we're closed on Sundays.
Okay.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 28 to 30.
I expect it'll take me a while to find what I need. There's such a lot here.
Yes, there is. But if you need help getting started, this term we're running 3 study skills workshops.
Oh? What are they on?
Let me see. The first one's on resources. Yes, here it is. How to use the library's resources. That includes everything, not just the print and technical resources.
That sounds useful. Is there anything on using the internet?
Let's see. The one on the internet for beginners was last term. This term it's finding research materials online.
That sounds interesting too. What's the last one?
It's a workshop on dissertations.
What do you mean? How to write one?
No, it's more to do with academic writing conventions. You know, writing a bibliography and how to refer to sources in your text, that sort of thing. Anyway, here's a leaflet with information about all three.
Oh, thanks a lot. That'll be very useful.
You're welcome.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a student talking about his research project in a university tutorial. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the talk and answer questions 31 to 40.
Well, good afternoon. In today's session, John Upton will be sharing some of the findings of his research project from last term. John.
Thanks. Well, first of all, a little bit about the background to the project. Our title, as you can see, is pretty straightforward. Car safety. But these days, there's a lot more to it than the usual injunctions about drinking and driving or speeding. I'd been interested and horrified by several newspaper reports on what people call road rage. For example, the famous incident of a man getting out of his car in a car park and hitting the driver of a van who had overtaken him earlier. It seemed to me that there were almost as many serious problems when cars were parked, i.e. were stationary, as when they were travelling at 90 miles an hour. So I decided to make this the focus of the project. For our research, we depended mainly on talking to individuals, asking them questions rather than using written questionnaires. We stopped people at a selected garage on the motorway over a 2-day period and asked them questions about what they'd observed or experienced themselves. Our respondents were both men and women, but the women were just slightly in the majority. We were pleased by the public's willingness to stop and chat to us. In the end, we talked to a total of 135 drivers over those 2 days. So, what were our findings? Well, as you can see, 93% of respondents had had some kind of problem. A surprisingly large percentage, 24%, had had their car damaged in some way. But the main type of incident was being shouted at. 79% had experienced that. 15% had experienced violence on their own persons. They'd actually been hit by someone. The police tended only to be informed when there was physical violence involved. So, what strategies had people developed to ensure their own safety? Let's have a look at the figures here. Well, first of all, it was quite striking that there were often distinct answers from the men and women. It was mainly women, for example, who said one shouldn't ever stop to find out how to get somewhere, whereas it was men who said you should try to avoid looking directly at other drivers. Both men and women... It was women who said you had to tell someone when you were due to get to a particular destination. Then, I had thought that it would be mainly men, but both sexes made the point that it's much safer to get keys out well in advance as you go towards your car. Men were very aware that muggers or whatever might be concealed behind the car. They also made the point that you should leave plenty of room when you park your car, so you can make a quick getaway if you need to. Finally, locking doors at all times. Men didn't think it was quite as important as women, but both gave it a high safety rating. When we asked them what they thought the best improvements had been in the last 5 years in helping with road rage problems...
That is the end of section 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.